Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. There is a new response, this one from China, upping their tariffs, but that wasn't the only increase in the latest tit for tat. The first full week of the new trade war ending on an upward swing. The Dow, NASDAQ, S&P 500 all up between 1.5% and 2%. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. So we started the week with retaliatory tariffs, only to have them taken partially away for most countries. The White House, though, again saying today all of this is their long-term strategy.
Past presidents just willingly accepted the failed status quo on trade that ripped off our workers and our companies. But that's not who this president is. He creates his own leverage and negotiates deals better than anyone else who has sat in the Oval Office before him.
Plus, the president's battle with the judiciary, the standoff between a federal judge and a Trump Justice Department over deportation flights. The administration facing a legal setback. The Supreme Court unanimously ruling that a wrongly deported migrant who was sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador must come back to the U.S.
The Supreme Court made their ruling last night very clear that it's the administration's responsibility to facilitate the return, not to effectuate the return.
There's no reason that this case needed to become a national issue. There's no reason that this case needed to go to the United States Supreme Court. And it's been the government that's done that at every step of the way.
Also tonight, why did one of the conservative justices on the high court vote against the president this week? NewsNation legal contributor Jesse Weber will be here to break that down in a moment. Trump's former chief of staff in the White House, Mick Mulvaney, Chris Stirewalt, also with me here tonight to outline the massive impact of what we saw this week and what could come next. But we begin with our Robert Sherman, live once again at the White House. Robert?
Hey there, Blake. Back and forth we go. China hitting back again today, upping their tariffs on American goods, which sets up a trade square-off between these two economic powerhouses. And as we enter these uncharted waters, the White House's message today is just trust them.
Phones are ringing off of the hooks. They've made it very clear they need the United States of America. They need our markets. They need our consumer base. And we've heard from South Korea. We've heard from Japan. The president has spoken to Vietnam. We have Italy coming to the White House next week. There's a reason for that, Sean, and it's because they need the United States of America and our business model and our markets to survive.
The White House believes that they have the needed leverage, and this is why. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent meeting this week with leadership from Vietnam in order to discuss trade talks with that country. But we've also heard from Japan, who says that there will be conversations with them as well. The leadership in Italy will be here. In fact, the White House saying that there's over 15 offers on the table when it comes to trade negotiations. But that's not all. On the other hand, you have China making a play of its own. President Xi in Spain today, meeting with Pedro Sanchez, the prime minister there, putting out this statement saying, quote, China and Europe should fulfill their international responsibilities, jointly uphold the trend of economic globalization and the international trade environment, and work together to oppose unilateral bullying, trying to make a push in order to court the Europeans. The U.S. and EU have, for now, announced pauses on retaliatory tariffs for 90 days as they try to work out a deal. Blake?
Our Robert Sherman live at the White House tonight. Robert, thank you. So the administration says tariffs are a part of a strategy to rebalance global trade, strike new deals, generate American jobs, bolster the economy. But critics are blasting the tariffs, warning the president's campaign might already be hurting American businesses.
Businesses have stopped planning what they're going to do in the future. Many businesses are just putting everything on hold. Nobody knows what the heck is going to happen next, given the chaos of this administration.
So we boiled it down tonight to three questions here on the Hill about the president's tariff goals. How will tariffs impact trade, U.S. manufacturing, the economy? How will they impact manufacturing and jobs? And will all of this ultimately raise prices? Mick Mulvaney with me now, so too is Chris Stirewalt. Happy Friday, gentlemen. We made it to the end of a wild week.
Hello, Berman.
Hello. Where are you, Mulvaney?
Oh, I'm wandering the planet. So down in Key West, Florida, they wouldn't let me wear my Key West jacket on a Friday because Steiwalt is there, and he's sort of the attire police. So
if I've done anything right in this life, if I can stop you from wearing that sport coat, then I have done something. Then I have finally achieved something.
All right, well, we'll start live in our bureau down there in the Conch Republic. Mick, first question. Will tariffs lead to more trade deals? Where are you tonight on this?
Yeah, I think so. Look, the one thing we know, that there's a lot of uncertainty. That's right. Chuck Schumer's right to raise the issue that people just don't know a lot, don't know as much as they knew 2 weeks ago. But the one thing we do know is that now the administration is taking the position tariffs are there as negotiating leverage. Aside from China, that's a little bit different because that's geopolitical as well. But most of the tariffs are there as leverage for trade deals. So yes, we're going to get more trade deals out of this.
Chris?
I mean, this was a great idea when it was the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This was a great idea. Look, admitting you're wrong, saying you made a mistake, saying that it didn't work is hard. It's one of the hardest things to do in politics. But I have found consistently that voters are very forgiving of politicians who say, we tried something, it didn't work, whoops, we're backing off it. Voters are very forgiving in that way. But getting back to the place where we were on this question in 2016, which was when we were moving toward trying to get the world together to gang up on China, is not going to be fast. And that's really the problem here. You want to do it, great, okay. And I'm not convinced at all that the administration is really ready to do that. But if they were, and they started working on this, it's a couple of years, right? This is a very long-term, effort to hammer out these bargains.
All right, Mick, Q2 here. Manufacturing, the impact there, how do you see it?
Generally, it should be good. If we have more fair trade deals overseas, it should help manufacturing. It's just going to look different than it would have looked, I think, if we were using tariffs as a way to get manufacturing back directly. Textiles are not coming back. Furniture is not coming back. But these deals, assuming they happen, and they need to happen. It's the big thing for the Trump administration now, Blake. They need a couple of deals early. Should help tech, should help services, should help generally the economy that we've built. We're not going back to 1978, but this could look really, really good in 2026.
Chris?
The idea that we need clarity from the administration on which it is. I agree with everything that Brother Mulvaney just said. That is all true, if that's what they mean. And they seem to go back and forth on this question of basically you've got Team Musk that says what Mick is saying,
right?
Lower barriers, let the U.S. outcompete the other countries. Yeah, it's not going to be, we're not going back to 1975 was the last year that the United States was a net exporter. We're not going back there, but we're going to make it better. Do you hear that? And then the next day, and I don't think anybody knows where the president's going to be on Monday.
I'm going to get to that observation in a second here. I've got an observation for you, Mulvaney, that I'm going to float out there. But lastly, real quick, the question involves lower prices. I don't think anyone's going there. What about higher prices?
Yeah, prices are going up in the short term. There's no question. I think the Trump team needs a couple deals quickly to sort of send the message. They also need to kick their deregulatory agenda, their energy policies into high gear. They also need to review something they've refused to look at so far, which is exemptions. There are some tariffs that simply make no sense at all because we are never going to produce the stuff here. We did this in the first term. We had tariffs without inflation because we did exemptions. They need to revisit that in the next 90 days.
Okay.
The slight damage to manufacturing pre-COVID in the first term, and as Mick says, the damages were mitigated from these things in a lot of different ways. But if they don't get a big tax cut and they don't get the Fed to bring rates down and they don't do a bunch of stuff to juice the economy around this, the prices will be politically devastating.
All right, so here's a couple observations from the week, guys. I thought of all the things that were out there, and there were lots. Perhaps tee up the Scott Bessent soundbite if we can, because we saw that the cabinet meeting, Mick, earlier this week. And you know how these go. They go around the table and all the cabinet secretaries say, Mr. President, you're amazing, you're awesome, and they describe all the amazing and awesome things, right? It was that way in the first term. We've seen it go around this way in the second term. Scott Bessent, though, said this.
The bond auction went very well yesterday. We had a lot of foreigners show up as the support, showing that the U.S. is still the best place to invest.
Mick, Chris, it was a cabinet meeting, and there was a conversation in the middle of it about a treasury auction. And here's why I bring it up. I think it goes to show how closely they are watching this. The fact that Scott Bessent would say that, knowing this meeting is being broadcast all around the world, right? Yep. So Bessent says that, but here's where I take a step back here for a second. It's a Friday night, and where's Donald Trump, President Trump? He's headed down to Mar-a-Lago. Two things, Mick, this weekend. One, he's going to be around a lot of his friends down there in Mar-a-Lago. And two, the bond markets are closed. So over the next 48 to 72 hours, with that being what we know is happening over that time frame, how does Trump emerge from Mar-a-Lago?
And you forgot the Masters is on all weekend, so it's going to be a good weekend to be the president of the United States. Look, the comment by Scott Bessent gets paid to watch the bond markets. He is the Treasury Secretary after all, but the fact that he mentioned it, your point is well made, which is I think that is what the administration is correctly watching right now. If the borrowing costs go to 6%, 8%, 10%, they're in a lot of trouble. We are in a lot of trouble. Keep in mind, I think they have to refinance something along the lines of $10 trillion of debt this year. So, yeah, they get a couple of days off from it, but Monday morning it's going to go back to watching the markets very closely.
Yeah, I guess you understand the point, Chris, right? Which is like the president's going to be out of Washington, the bond market's going to be closed, and who knows what happens Monday.
Did you see the president in the Oval Office congratulating a couple of his visitors on how much money they made on the stock rebound? You made $900 million. He's making all this money. You have Democrats hammering Republicans on selling on the news, accusing them basically of insider trading. All of this stuff. Republicans have to be so careful. This nailed the Biden administration when they looked like they were out of touch with the concerns of ordinary people, told them it was transitory, told them they shouldn't worry about it. This is looking a lot the same way.
Mick Mulvaney from our Conch Republic Bureau. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
The fish are coming back, I promise.
I'll see Steyerwalt later in the show. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you both. All right, still to come tonight. Here on the Hill, the escalating trade war with China. There are no signs, of course, of letting up on either side, really.
They've really taken advantage of our country for a long period of time. They've ripped us off beyond anybody.
But how bad could the conflict get? What China just admitted that could affect everything from your airports to your water, plus the administration's deportation dilemma. The White House says he's an alleged gang member. The Supreme Court says he shouldn't have been removed from the U.S. The new twist today surrounding a Maryland father who was sent to El Salvador. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is the center of politics. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. Steyerwalt's leaving for a second, but he'll be right back. I'm back in 4 minutes.
Thanks for listening to NewsNation on the Go. I'm Leland Vittert. We're here for you 24/7 on the NewsNation app, or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
Welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. The trade war intensifying tonight. China raising its tariffs against the U.S. to 125%, but also this, a stunning admission about cyber attacks on the U.S. The Wall Street Journal reporting the Chinese officials revealed in a series of cyber attacks on U.S. infrastructure during a secret meeting back in December. Beijing telling the Biden administration they spent years targeting computer networks in the U.S., including power grids, water supplies, ports, and airports. China linking the attacks to increasing U.S. support for Taiwan. With me now, once again, the retired Air Force Brigadier General John Tiker. General, thanks for being with us tonight. Appreciate it. Always nice to see you, sir. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, Blake. Thanks for having me.
So you remember last year, it was early 2024, when the government came out and said, look, there's this group called Volt Typhoon. They are a criminal enterprise within China, and they're doing all sorts of bad things, right? And the belief is, with China, with Russia, with Iran, all that runs to the top, right? So should we be surprised that China acknowledged this?
Blake, we shouldn't be surprised, but this is a very clear threat from China to the United States, that they have hacked into our infrastructure, which means that they can turn out the lights or shut off our water at any point. And they want us to remember that every time we make a move in geopolitics, such that we have to consider that they could do real harm to the United States and to the average citizen. And that meeting in December and that not so subtle threat was a reminder that they have real leverage against us.
So that was under an old administration, though, right? Obviously, the Biden administration was outgoing. Donald Trump had just won the election in the prior month. Actions do speak louder than words. Why do you think they levied the threat? Maybe because they knew they were getting into another trade war with Trump? I don't know. Why do you think?
Blake, I think that they wouldn't have the guts to do so against the Trump administration. But
so you think none of these headlines going forward?
No, I think that they knew they were transmitting something to the Trump administration and the United States of America going forward. But I think they did it at the transition of administrations so that it would be a lingering consideration for both the outgoing Biden and the incoming Trump in any decision they make, whether it's related to trade or geopolitics or national security.
What's the practical effect here, General?
I think that this is classic deterrent theory, Blake, that they want us, if we had a decision to make, to sit on the sidelines and not do something that they would not want us to do, because we know that they have a lever that could be very harmful to us. And until the National Security Agency or United States Cyber Command find a way to extricate ourselves from this leverage from the Chinese, then they have a threat that's hanging over our head at all times.
You say deterrence, right? And I hear you. They were not, China doesn't like our position toward Taiwan, right? And that position probably isn't changing anytime soon. I mean, we're selling fighter jets, F-16s, new F-16s to them. So what sort of changes here? Because American policy is not going to change, is it?
Blake, I think that as they're considering what they're going to do in the Western Pacific, ultimately against Taiwan, and whether that is a blockade or whether that is an attack, that they would love to pull all the levers they can, and they've been consistent in doing so, to make us question and make the world question whether we will engage in provocation that comes from China in the Western Pacific. And I think that this is a consistent part of their strategy called unrestricted warfare, where they consider ourselves at war against the United States in all domains and all times and all spectrums. And this is just another example of that.
General, I've been around Washington long enough to know that the NSA director and some NSA folks were let go by this administration just the other day. And in that article, it also mentioned how the current administration could potentially scale back on cybersecurity efforts going forward. And I wonder if this, again, granted that we know it's no surprise that everything runs to the top in China, if this was a leak to try to get the attention of the Trump administration to say, don't do that, don't go there.
Blake, I do think it's important that the timing of this, wherever that leak came from,
I'm not saying it is, but I'm just connecting some dots here.
No, I think that it's important to realize that the Trump administration has to consider that the cyber domain is extremely important. And whatever the United States does going forward against China or others, that we have to defend ourselves and have offensive capability in that domain. And this is a reminder that the cyber domain is extremely important.
Retired Brigadier General John Teichert, always nice to see you, hear your perspective. Have a great weekend, sir. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Sounds great, Blake. Thanks.
All right, still much more ahead tonight. Here on the Hill, the White House says a Maryland father is an alleged gang member. The Supreme Court says, get him out of a prison in El Salvador, bring him back to the U.S. Tonight, what the Trump administration is saying about his whereabouts, plus this.
One of my top priorities will be to quickly defeat inflation and make America affordable again.
Promises made, promises kept. The administration is confident that everything is just fine, but the new numbers show confidence is dropping. So how might this impact the president's agenda? Keep in mind, it's not even 100 days in yet. Stay with us here on the Hill. We're back in a few.
You're listening to The Hill on NewsNation's audio stream, available 24/7 on the NewsNation app, or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Just about 6:30 here on this Friday night. Tonight, the Justice Department not providing any information to a judge about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, including his location, defying an order after the Supreme Court ruled the Trump administration must facilitate his return. The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt asked about it today.
The Supreme Court made their ruling last night very clear that it's the administration's responsibility to facilitate the return, not to effectuate the return.
Garcia is the Maryland father and, as the White House puts it, an alleged MS-13 gang member who was deported to the notorious El Salvador mega prison last month. His attorney reiterating today that there's been no contact with him since that deportation.
Neither we nor the family have been able to make any contact with him. This is one of the principal human rights violations that occurs in that facility.
With me now, Joe Khalil, live tonight on What's Going On Here. Joe?
Yeah, so Blake, there was obviously a lot of tension in that courtroom today.
Yep.
The judge, Paula Zenas, very frustrated with the DOJ because she said a lot of this is unacceptable. It was three basic questions she asked. Where is Mr. Garcia? What condition is he in, and what steps has the White House taken to bring him back? In other words, to comply with the Supreme Court order facilitating his return. And the Deputy Assistant Attorney General couldn't answer any of those three questions. So she was frustrated. Basically, where we are now is, she says, it's not by Tuesday, which is what the DOJ asked for, but every day there will be updates, she says, from the administration on his condition and on a concrete plan to bring him back into the United States. And there were some questions from the Supreme Court about what the word facilitate
we're gonna get into
actually means.
Right.
But she says today, the judge did that, she clarified that, and it basically means to take every step they possibly can take to try to bring him back into the country. So that is sort of where it is right now. At the same time, something that I thought people missed because of the tension in the courtroom was the DOJ did say, we're gonna comply with the Supreme Court's order. They didn't say they were gonna fight it or push back. They said we will comply, but again, we will see what that means, what that looks like, and the judge is expecting something of an update in terms of condition and location even tomorrow. So,
working over the weekend on this one. Joe Khalil, live with us tonight. Joe, thank you. All right, joining me now is Bill McGinley, the former Trump White House cabinet secretary, and Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor, two of the best legal minds I know. Hello, gentlemen. Happy Friday. Thanks for being here. So this is interesting because the Trump White House, they say the ruling reaffirmed the president's authority over foreign relations. The attorney says the rule of law prevailed and his client was wrongfully detained. And then the Trump White House today says there's a difference between facilitating the return and effectuating it. You know what it's like being inside that White House and putting up a legal defense, or at least how the administration thinks. Where do you think this is going tonight, Bill?
It's going back to the Supreme Court.
How so?
And I think, because one of the things the Supreme Court said in the order that a lot of people aren't focusing on is that the Supreme Court ordered the district court, you need to clarify exactly what you're going to do. But in doing so, they also cautioned this district court judge, do not exceed your authority. In other words, the President of the United States under Article 2 is the chief executive officer, the commander-in-chief, and the chief magistrate. All of that gives him plenary authority over international relations. This is not a U.S. citizen. ICE and others had determined that he may have been a gang member or was a gang member, which is how he got deported in the first place. And if you look at a lot of the court's precedents on these issues, whether it's Trump versus Hawaii that came out of the first term, the president has broad authority here and discretion not only under the statute, but Article 2 gives him a lot of authority.
So you give an insight into where the administration could potentially be going, but I guess just for a layman's terms here, I would say, wait a minute, this case was just at the Supreme Court. You say it's going back to the Supreme Court. How does all that shake out?
Right, and you're seeing what the district court judge is doing, asking the Department of Justice all the questions that you just laid out. And I think what's going to end up happening is they will find out some information. On a daily basis, they'll begin to update the judge. But I really think that if the DOJ comes forward with the evidence that precipitated his deportation in the first place, it may put this to bed.
Jesse, spill on to something?
So a couple of things there. First of all, I think it's remarkable that when a judge gives you homework, you don't show up and you don't even give a good reason for why you didn't come back. I mean, it's not even the dog ate your homework. So look, first of all, I have to say this. The Supreme Court, effectuate, facilitate, you could say it's semantics. I think at the end of the day, it was very clear that the court has to understand and defer to the executive branch regarding foreign affairs. But it didn't say that the government is within its rights to not have him back. I think the big argument is, well, what's the government going to do? If the court is saying you got to provide more information about how you're getting him back, Remember, the U.S. government's paying El Salvador, what, $6 million to house the prisoners? Is that not a good bargaining chip through diplomatic channels to actually get him back? Assuming he wasn't Abrego Garcia, assuming he was somebody else that the Trump administration really wanted back, I think they would have figured out a way to ultimately make it happen. So at the very least, and by the way, I have to say this, the court gave the administration an out here, said, okay, I don't understand why you didn't come forward with information. You're coming back with information every day, even if you don't have information. Tell me that, because I don't think the court wants the appearance of the Trump administration not following its orders. So we're going to see what happens at 5 p.m. every day.
There was another big Supreme Court case this week, and it dealt with the Alien Enemies Act, basically the ability to deport suspected Tren de Aragua gang members out of the country. And Bill, the 3 liberal justices sided on this one with Amy Coney Barrett, the conservative justice. And there's been a lot of backlash in conservative circles because this is not the first time that she has sided against the administration, unfreezing USAID payments, reinstating federal workers, the case I just mentioned as well. Are you disappointed in Amy Coney Barrett?
No, I think it's basically the makeup of the court. It's not 6 conservatives and 3 liberals.
You don't think it's that?
No, I don't think that line is that bright. I think what you have is 3 conservatives, right? Thomas, Gorsuch, Alito.
Okay.
And then you have 3 institutionalists. Now, Kavanaugh's more of a conservative than an institutionalist, but I think Coney Barrett and Roberts, being the swing votes, are the institutionalists. So I think when they're looking at these cases, not only are they saying, trying to figure out the facts and the law, but they're also trying to preserve the integrity and the credibility of the court. And I think that you have a very aggressive administration that's going to push very hard on the unitary theory of the executive under Article 2, meaning that the president, as the chief executive, has broad latitude to be able to do a lot of things, especially on the topic of immigration. And I think what you're going to see is that Coney Barrett and Roberts are going to end up being the swing votes on this.
Do you think Trump wishes he had that pick back?
Yes.
Okay. Jesse, I'll give you the last word here.
Yeah, I don't quite agree with the criticism that Amy Coney Barrett has been getting. I mean, look at the decision today. She didn't even jump onto the criticism from the liberal justices against the Trump administration from the ruling earlier in the week. She didn't say, the president doesn't have the authority under the Alien Enemies Act. She basically said this case shouldn't have come to the Supreme Court. It was a procedural objection that she had. So I think we have to really look at carefully about what she's saying and what she's doing. And as I said to you earlier in the week, a centrist judge or a judge that might be, more towards the middle than people were expecting. Is that really the worst thing? That's my take.
Never stepped foot a day in law school, but that's why I rely on these guys. Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor. Bill McGinley, don't go anywhere. Still with us on the other side of the break. Appreciate it. All right, still to come tonight here on The Hill. Is the president living up to one of his biggest campaign promises?
And we will quickly defeat it. We have to bring down prices. But prices will come down. You just watch.
What new numbers about consumer confidence, though, reveal as the trade war ramps up once again between China and the U.S.? Full panel, other side. We'll be right back.
This is NewsNation with a trust rating higher than any of our competitors. NewsNation is proud to be America's fastest growing cable news network. See for yourself at joinnn.com.
All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. We've heard all different numbers from President Trump regarding what tariffs he's going to slap on who. Right now, 145% against China for potentially the next 90 days, 10% across the board globally, essentially. The one thing we do know is that the uncertainty is not good for the market, as we saw this week. But the uncertainty is also seeming to have an impact on look right, look left, basically anywhere down your street or whatever store you might walk into, you, your friends, your neighbors. According to a new survey from CNBC, 73% of Americans are worried about their current financial situation. Just about the same number, 72%, are opposed to the president's tariffs. And when asked to name factors contributing to their financial stress, 86% mentioned inflation. 3/4 said interest rates. 2/3 once again said tariffs. Now, consumer confidence is dropping as well. The University of Michigan conducting a survey in which the numbers were basically all across the board dropping from one month to the next. You can see it there. But according to the White House, there is no need, they say, to panic.
The United States of America is the strongest, best economy in the world, as evidenced by the more than 75 countries who have called the administration immediately to cut good deals. So the president wants to do what's right for the American people.
So what happens next as the tariffs rise and the confidence seemingly dips? Full panel here with me now. Bill McGinley, former cabinet secretary in the first Trump White House. Julie Manchester, national political reporter for The Hill. Chris Stirewalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. And Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. Hello to you all. Happy Friday. Thanks for being here. There are a lot of reasons why President Biden pulled out of the race last go around. You know this intimately. But at the very, very, very top of the list behind his age was prices. And here we are again. What would you, from your experience in the last campaign, seeing how this impacts? I know you don't want to advise Republicans, but sort of you've been there, Dan.
Yeah.
Where do you think this goes next?
Well, I think the stock market and the bond market, which we've been talking about ad nauseum the last week, is interesting, and there's real impacts there to 401ks and to the economy, but those are the canary in the coal mine. I mean, the real rubber meets the road in politics when it comes to the effect on consumers, and we haven't really seen yet, Blake, the impact on consumers. This is all the numbers you just quoted on the screen. This is anxiety about what could happen, right? People are already kind of at a 10, and they're hearing all of this bad news coming. They don't trust what he's doing in the economy. But when this actually goes into effect and is in effect for a while, what you're going to see is a 27% actual effective rate on the tariffs, even now, even with the pullback on those 75 countries or more, with the China products that we buy, with a 10% across the board, it's a 27% Yale budget analysis.
When you average it all in.
Correct, and that's a $4,700 hit annually to the average household. That's big time. And they just went through this period of COVID when, from my perspective, we had a good argument with Biden. We were bringing inflation down after a global pandemic that we didn't cause. This is entirely Trump's self-made recession, self-made price hike. And what's really bad for Republicans and for Trump is that he campaigned on day one, I'm going to bring down costs, and instead he's doing the exact opposite.
So you can look at the markets, Bill, and I could say S&P 500 down 8% year to date, Dow down 5%, NASDAQ down 14%. Russell 2000, which is the smaller companies, down 16%. That's the market. But I look at what's your biggest worry. 2/3 either say price of food or cost of housing.
Yeah, I think I just got to say one thing.
Sure, go for it.
About what my friend just said here, and that is that I don't think anybody thinks that the Biden administration actually brought inflation down. I think, the Biden administration, through its monetary policies, it came up, and that's why we saw some of the cumulative inflation and what people were paying when Biden left office.
There was definitely the roller coaster of up and down.
But remember,
we can get into that.
Compounding.
But right now, this is Trump's problem. Swear on.
That's right. And I think Secretary Bennett is putting the right message out there and trying to articulate what the administration's trying to do. And that is the Main Street versus the Mag 7 economic reforms. Right? The mega stocks that are out there. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to repatriate and reshore all of those manufacturing jobs. The tariffs are designed to do it, but remember, you can't take tariffs in isolation. You have to take tariffs not only with that, but trying to bring inflation down, bring interest rates down, which we've seen momentarily, but it hopefully will keep going, but also to get those jobs back on shore. And so that's why you see, the labor unions in Michigan, the auto workers, and a lot of the people who actually build the things that we need are cheering these policies and saying, be patient. It reminds me a lot of Volcker and Reagan, when Reagan came in after the Carter administration and had to break the back of inflation through high interest rates. There was a little bit of pain there for a while, but ultimately it ended up in a roaring American economy that gave Reagan 49 states.
So these are both sides of the argument.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from folks here in this town?
Well, look, in this town, there's obviously the political calculus that everyone's taking into effect. Look, Donald Trump is not on the ballot next year. House Republicans are on the ballot next year. We saw House Republicans, at least for now, the real work is beginning soon, get that budget resolution win. They want to be able to campaign on that, campaign on the extension of the Trump tax cuts. The problem problem, though, is that if we see inflation spike, you're already seeing Democrats flipping this around on Republicans and saying, look what's happening now. Prices aren't going down. And you're also hearing this message of a tariff is a tax. So going forward for Republicans, it's going to be difficult. I think, though, it's also been interesting to watch the debate between Democrats on this issue because there is a bit of a debate on it. Governor Gretchen Whitmer was here in Washington earlier.
At the White House.
She was at the White House.
In the Oval.
In the
Oval, yes, with the president, yes.
She made a comment that was striking. She said, you know, I don't want to we shouldn't use tariffs recklessly, but I understand them in theory. Then you had Colorado Governor Jared Polis really hitting back on that, saying that's not, pushing back on that. So I think there's a disagreement also among Democrats, and they need to be cognizant going forward as well.
Being obsessed with what your very online weirdo base wants to do is something that led Democrats off a cliff, right? So in the opening chapter of Joe Biden's presidency, they got high on their own supply, and he thought he was going to be FDR, and inflation went up, and things got off the rails. It took them until the election year before it was like, we got to close the border, we got to get aggressive on prices, we got to do all this stuff. I cannot believe that I am watching the current administration repeat every mistake that the Biden administration made, but in steroidal fashion. They're in a bubble. They're hearing what their activist base wants them to talk about. They're focused on these issues. And I will promise you that the beating that Republicans take, and Bill is very right, in 1982, Republicans took a shellacking and came back big because the economy came roaring back. If this works, yeah, there's a story where Democrats are locked out of majorities forever and all this stuff. I just don't think very many Republicans think it's actually going to work. I just don't think that very.
Can I say on that really quickly, though?
You and then Bill.
Back to that point. I think that when you look at the actual strategy, the problem is there is not one. This idea that he's going to negotiate 90 trade deals or 150 in the next 90 days when his own trade rep, Greer, is in front of Congress not knowing what's happening 1 minute to the next. Is he going to personally do this with every single country? And if he does, what's the plan to reshore manufacturing? It's bogus.
You had a front row seat to the cabinet. What would you say?
Yeah, I would tell you that Bessent and Lutnick and others, I think Rubio will get involved. Jamieson Greer will definitely be involved from USTR. Navarro advises the president, but I also think Kevin Hassett at NEC, there's going to be a whole team that's going to be working on this. And I would say to you, Chris, this White House understands the urgency of time because this is their second term. They understand that they have a limited window to get this stuff done, which is why I think they're really trying to, the fire hose of EOs that come out, the tariffs coming on, dereg is next. We're coming up on tax day, and they're going to use that to try and sell the reconciliation bill and the tax cuts because they really want to get the American worker back working again and making the things that Americans need as opposed to us importing it. The one thing the pandemic did expose is American weakness. We don't have our own active pharmaceutical ingredients are not made here in the United States. When we look at all of the stuff that we import during the pandemic, we realize the national security implications of all these consumer goods and other things that we need to be doing here in the United States, whether it's the chips, whether it's the basic hardware to make ships and supply our military. We don't have time.
But he's going after chips. He's going after all the policies Biden put in place that actually create those manufacturing jobs at home, and instead wrecking the supply chain with this policy.
But the devil's in the details.
Let me leave you with this. 90 days, he says, right, that we're going to negotiate deals. Are people here comfortable with that from what you're hearing?
I think it's a short window of time, so I think there is a lack of comfort.
Donald Trump has not been in office for 90 days yet.
Right, that's something to keep in mind when we talk about all this. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the other side of the break. It's what America wants, don't you know? Friday Night Unfiltered.
America is weird, man.
It's what America wants, I guess. I don't know. Chris and I talk about some of the best images of the week. We have no idea what's coming, though. So you're going to get us unfiltered on the other side. And Elizabeth Vargas reports about 8 minutes away. She has brand new details on what happened to the Titanic. In the final hours, could it rewrite history? That's 7 o'clock Eastern right here on News Nation. But on the other side, Steyerwalt and I are back.
Titanic.
Thanks, guys. That was great. Appreciate it. I'm Blake Berman, and you're listening to America's fastest growing cable news network, News Nation. News for all America. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on News Nation. Time now for a little thing we call Friday Night Unfiltered. Steyerwalt. Our team puts together sort of some of the best images or videos, I don't even know, of the week. This is the only time of the week where we have no idea what is coming. So let's give us...
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready.
What's the first one here?
Oh, it's us. Good feelings.
Good feelings.
I have
That
good
is the
vibes
show.
about that. I have really...
I was looking at it and I was like, okay, so it's about to come.
I have really good vibes about that. Feels like it's telling everybody to watch the Hill Sunday.
Take it full. Just take it full. Take it full, guys. I see it on the screen. Oh, it is full. That's the stock market, Chris. And I think that guy's face... Let's look at the screen here. That guy's face kind of says it
like,
all.
What the heck? Oh, he's got his Trump towel in front of him. And that is the look on the face of a lot of people in the business community who thought Donald Trump was joking. They were taking him neither literally nor seriously when he talked about tariffs all this time. And then he did it.
It is remarkable how, I guess you could say, caught off guard Wall Street was. They didn't think it was going to be this deep or this hard, and it was.
Right. And the administration says he's been talking about this for years. What we're finding out is a lot of stuff that Trump was talking about for the first term that he was prevented from doing by Republicans in Congress, by people in his administration. Now he can do it. So they're getting a snootful.
Give us the second image, wall or full screen. It doesn't matter. Whatever we got.
Oh, baby dog.
Explain baby dog for the folks at home.
West Virginia, former West Virginia governor, current junior senator from the 35th state, Jim Justice. That is his secret weapon. That is baby dog, the English bulldog, who hangs out at the resort he owns, the Greenbrier. It is an extremely good-looking dog.
He owns the Greenbrier?
He owns the Greenbrier.
I did not know that about
It's an extremely good-looking dog.
Last one of the week, image, video. I don't know. We'll see what we got. There we go. Who is that? That might be Justin Thomas. Either way, it's the Masters. This is my second, third, fourth, and fifth best days of the year. Favorite days of the year.
I do love it, and it's a nice reset, nice moment to say that spring is really here. It's really happening. It's really going on, and I get to have my fantasy that this is the year that my golf game is going to get in shape. I'm really going to do it this time instead of just watching my son get better. I'm going to actually do it this year. So this is the weekend that I live that lie.
And I say best days of the year, best sports days of the year.
Yeah, tell Mrs. Berman, listen, he means it.
Michigan, Ohio State, #1, but these are right after it. You got the best Sunday show in the biz. Who you got coming up this week?
We've got Ron Johnson. We've got Gabe Amo, Democrat from Rhode Island. We're going to have a very interesting discussion between the head of two different think tanks. I know it's too sexy. I know I'm selling the sex here, but people from two think tanks about big ideas.
Interesting. Steyerwolf, 10 a.m. Eastern, The Hill Sunday. Please watch.